The Republicans in the House of Representatives have begun their hearings, their investigations into China on a number of fronts. One, of course, holding China accountable for COVID. The discussions, the debates around the lab leak theory. Was it a lab leak? Was it not a lab leak? And, of course, the weaponization, however it was released from the lab or in what manner, but the weaponization by the Chinese Communist Party of COVID, not just here in the United States within its own borders, but around the world. So there's a lot to cover on this topic and a lot to be discussed. And, there are some occasions where a combination of skill sets and experience, and someone you're familiar with on this show, is absolutely necessary. Dr. William Parker, PhD, the author, of course, of Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century, CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies, retired naval officer, and someone who knows a thing or two about epidemiology, pandemic spread, and the Pentagon. That's a lot there, Bill, but that is a subset of your many skills and why we need to talk about this with you.
Well, David, first of all, it's great to be back on your show, and it's always a pleasure to hear you pull out the details that are necessary. I was thinking last night, when you asked me to come on the show, I was thinking last night about a conversation you and I had in 2016. And that was when I was writing the book, Guaranteeing America's Security for the 21st Century. And I asked you to take a look at parts of it because you're one of the smarter guys I know. And so you read this part and you went, whoa, are you serious? And I'm going to read that back to you because I have actually your marking here on the draft. And I wrote, biological threats have the greatest possibility to kill the most people, overthrow governments, and change the world. And you were like, really? Over nukes, over other things? And I said, yes, because of the epidemiological aspects of it, much like the Black Plague and other diseases in our past history. If we have some kind of disease like this break out globally, it will have a greater impact than we can imagine on our economy in particular, and on deaths to human beings because of global travel. And you said, okay, I agree with you. And so I left it in the book. So I was thinking about that last night because I still have your markup here on think about this before you write it. So there we go. Here we are. 300 Americans are still dying from the coronavirus each day today. And yet you're not really hearing a whole lot about corona on a daily basis, except for who started it. So there we go. I'll start there.
And that's to that point of who started it. We can't get hung up on that. And my concern is that becomes more the current narrative of who started it, rather than following the evolution of from the beginning to its use, to its weaponization, to its actual effects, even if not deliberately weaponized by the CCP, by others around the world, by people with agendas, but the real world effects. I mean, this is a bigger event than I think any of our lifetime events, and that's something to say considering that in my lifetime, Reagan took on the Soviet Union, right? We saw the fall of the Soviet Union, but here we have something that went even beyond the reach of the Soviet Union and its global effect.
No, you're spot on there, what you just said. David, there is a huge issue here globally when we start talking about COVID, when we start talking about this particular virus. And first, I think that there are a lot of people out there that don't completely understand, and I'm talking about people who are speaking on this issue on a regular basis, that perhaps don't quite understand the difference between what's naturally occurring as an outbreak and what's a likely biological weapon employment. And very simply, naturally occurring, you have a general start that's relatively slow, a rise that's steady, and then it recedes gradually. Where a weapon of some sort is characterized, I'm talking about biological weapon, where it has a high number of casualties starting almost immediately, a lot of deaths. The casualty rate remains high for some period of time, and then then you will get additional peaks and valleys. The thing will probably mutate several times, and then it'll eventually go away. That is the difference between a weapon that is a biological weapon that's been employed and a naturally occurring outbreak. One usually comes out of a lab. The other one usually comes out of a farm field or some other place.